Welcome you on behalf of the Fleming family, and thank you for your coming and celebrating the life of Owen Fleming, all 80 years, from 1926 to 2006. Let us find comfort in these words from Ecclesiastes. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hurries to the place where it rises. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they continue to flow. And from the Song of the River by Randolph Hearst. The snow melts on the mountain, and the water runs down to the spring, and the spring, in a turbulent fountain, runs down to a riotous river. And the river flows to the sea, and the water again goes back in rain to the hills where it used to be. And I wonder if life's deep mystery isn't much like the rain and the snow, returning through all eternity to the places it used to know. For life was born on the lofty heights and flows in a laughing stream to the river below, whose onward flow ends in a peaceful dream. So at last, when our life has passed and the river has run its course, it again goes back, or the self-same track, to the mountain which was its source. So why prize life, or why fear death, or dread what is to be? The river ran its allotted span till it reached the silent sea. Then the water harked back to the mountain top to begin its course once more. So we shall run the course begun till we reach the silent shore. Then revisit earth in a pure rebirth from the heart of the virgin snow. So don't ask why we live or die, or whether or when we go, or wonder about the mysteries that only God may know. The gift of life is a mystery greater than we can comprehend. It is full of joy and celebration. It is woven with sorrow and regret. It is blessed with pleasure and delight. It is touched by pain and grief. We receive it as an unasked for gift, and we let go of it as a precious treasure beyond value. Even the tallest cottonwood by the riverbank must fall someday, and even the most ancient oak must return to the soil from which it grew. But perhaps months and years are not the only measure of a life. Perhaps love and joy, companionship, family, friends, giving and receiving, cherishing the beauty of creation, dreaming dreams, risking and expanding boundaries, seizing adventures are also a measure of one's life. George Whitney asked the question, how do we take the measure of a man? By inch of waist, or length of leg, or size of shoe, or span of arm? Perhaps all these things and more. Within the corners of the mind, the broad dimensions of the soul, the precious heritage of the heart. And so, our task for love and friendship's sake is to capture and make plain the quiet strengths of Him who was and is our friend. From an unknown poet, we hear these words: "The strength of a man isn't seen in the width of his shoulders, but in the width of his arms that encircles us. The strength of a man isn't in the deep tone of his voice, it's in the gentle words he whispers. The strength of a man isn't in how respected he is at work, but how respected he is at home. The strength of a man isn't in how much he can lift, but in the burdens that he can carry. The mark of such a man, above all else, is honesty." So how will the value of our days be measured? It won't matter where we come from or what side of the tracks we lived on at the end. It won't matter whether we were beautiful or brilliant. Even our gender and our skin color will be irrelevant. So what will matter? What will matter is not what we bought, but what we built. Not what we got, but what we gave. What will matter is not our success, but our significance. What will matter is not what we learned, but what we taught. What will matter is every act of integrity, compassion, courage, or sacrifice that enriched, empowered, or encouraged others to emulate our example. What will matter is not our competence, but our character. What will matter is not our memories, but the memories that live in those who loved us. What will matter is not how long we will be remembered, but by whom and for what. Living a life that matters doesn't happen by accident. It's not a matter of circumstances, but of choice. Owen Fleming chose to live a life that mattered. He was a man of great character, honesty, integrity, and principle. He enriched, empowered, and encouraged others. It is that interweaving of life and death that brings us here today. Today we come with both tears and laughter to say thank you and to remember the gifts and contributions of Owen Fleming's life. I invite you to join me in prayer. Loving Spirit, Holy One of many names, you are the creator of all who dwell on earth and in heaven. Look kindly on Owen's family and friends who are touched by loss and sorrow. Give them grace to trust, even if they do not understand. In loneliness, may they remember Owen in love, assured that he is in your good keeping. Bless them with your presence and give them courage for the days to come. Direct their thoughts and decisions that they may be guided by your wisdom in all they do. Surround them with the love of others who embrace them and walk by their side. In their grief, give them the comfort of your Spirit, that they may wait on your tender mercies new each morning, bringing them rest, hope, and healing. Bring strength and peace to those gathered here today who have come to honor Owen Fleming. Help us to remember that in honoring Owen today and in the days to come, we honor your promise and its fulfillment. We pray these things in your loving Spirit, trusting your presence with us today. I had the great honor this past week to read stories of Owen's early life written in his own hand in a book that Norma had given him called A Father's Legacy. There's something about reading one's story or another's story in their own handwriting, which is kind of a unique experience these days because of our great computers, and so we don't always see someone's handwriting. He states that his memories really start about the time that his mother and stepfather moved their family to Hollywood, California from Rapid City, South Dakota. It was during the Depression, and most unemployed Americans believed everyone in Hollywood in the motion picture industry was loaded with money, and being there guaranteed you would get your share. But the reality was that it was a lean and mean time. Owen's family lived rent-free on the old, and I hope this is right, the Max Sennett Ranch. Sometimes Owen's handwriting left me guessing. So, in a house without water or gas or electricity. It was only 3 miles over the hills from the famous Hollywood and Vine intersection of Southern California wealth and fame. This area has since been sold and is now Forest Lawn Cemetery. Growing up on 1,000 acres of a Wild West motion picture ranch with 300 head of horses was great, Owen says. Although they were so isolated, he had no one his own age to grow up with or to be a buddy with. He rode, he hiked, he went down to the LA River, which was still pristine at that time, and waded in the waters. It was a 3-mile cross-country walk to his elementary school and junior high. During this time, the family income was quite sporadic. Money was plentiful when his stepdad worked, and sparse when no horse pictures were being shot. Owen was very close, had a very close and loving relationship with his mother. They started a little business together in those very stark days. His grandfather had been a candy maker, and his mother knew how to make the best fudge anywhere. She'd make up batches of fudge, and they would cut them and wrap them up, and then they would sell them to the motion picture crews working on location at the ranch. It was 10 cents a bundle, and they made some real spending money of that time. Owen also began selling Saturday Evening Post, and he'd walk a 25 to 30 miles sales route, pulling his little wagon filled with magazines. During a 6-month contest, Owen became the national champion sales kid, winning a shiny new bicycle. He became, as he said, a salesman par excellence. Eventually, they left the ranch and moved into their own home with all the amenities up in the Laurel Canyon Boulevard in North Hollywood. This time in his life was when his life took on a new direction. His mother enrolled him in a music class to learn the saxophone. Well, he hated the saxophone. He would avoid it at all costs, breaking reeds, bending springs and keys, so that it never worked when his poor music teacher from his elementary school would schedule him for a lesson. Now his mother was once again enrolling him in the junior high beginner's class, again with the saxophone. The teacher of this class was one that brought real happiness into his life, really for the first time. The teacher figured out Owen, and each week he let him play a new and different instrument, the flute, the trombone, the French horn, until finally he encountered the tuba. That's when his life changed. He was moved into the junior high school band with 110 other students. He said it was a great group. And then mid-semester, he was moved up into the orchestra with, again, another 110 students. They were playing overture to the Meistersingers by Wagner and other staples of classic music, which he loved. The orchestra won first prize at the Ontario Music Festival, and then 4 months later, they joined the Los Angeles All-City Orchestra. Owen was then added to the Los Angeles All-City School Band. About that time, he was given a complete musical scholarship to the Black Fox Military Academy. While at Black Fox, he had joined the California Youth Symphony, which was sponsored by the Hollywood Studios, who used the youth ministry, the symphony, to work on several motion pictures. One that he worked on was the Song of Russia, starring Robert Taylor. While with the California Youth Symphony, Hans Kindler, conductor of the National Symphony in Washington, D.C., was a visiting conductor and was doing the Brahms First Symphony with this youth symphony, and recognized Owen's talent after he played his first 5 notes. Hans Kindler stopped the orchestra and asked Owen to see him after rehearsal. He made Owen an offer of $75 a week to join the National Symphony, which was an offer this 16-year-old could not refuse. After attending Black Fox for 1 year, Owen became the youngest professional symphonic orchestra member in the United States. Washington, D.C., during World War II, was a beehive of activities. Owen would write with thousands of young female secretaries and government workers. He moved into a 4-story red brick boarding house on Massachusetts Avenue, 1 block off of DuPont Square. His tuba had been bent during the bus trip from Hollywood to D.C., so he had to use a tuba owned by the symphony. He called himself a naive country bumpkin when it came to the social expectations of being a member of the National Symphony. But gosh, he was only 16 years old. And during that year, the symphony toured Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, and Maryland, which he said that the touring spots were not always the best accommodations. The next year, 1944, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy, attending the Naval School of Music, and played in the U.S. Navy Band in Washington, D.C., and he served on the USS New Jersey. After the war, when he was discharged in 1947, he studied conducting and became the personal prodigy of conductor Pierre Matour, in San Francisco and in Hancock, Maine. And during that 9-year period, Owen played tuba in the San Francisco Symphony, toured post-war Berlin and the Boston Symphony, and established the Hancock Chorus and Maine Little Symphony. His desire to inspire youngsters and amateur adult musicians with the beauty of music resulted in Owen's decision to become a music educator. He attended Boston University on scholarship, receiving his bachelor's degree in music while serving as assistant band director. He taught in Brookline, Massachusetts, and Hackensack, New Jersey. It was in Hackensack that Owen met Betty. Betty was a high school student at Hackensack, and Owen was her music teacher. He was trying to start a big band group and wanted 6 girls out in front of the band playing trumpets. And is that the picture? So you all can see that, the picture where they met. Betty was one of those picturesque women, and her father wanted her to take extra music lessons, and the family just adopted Owen. Betty went to college in Maryland, and in 1961 they were married. And they moved to California in the same year. And Betty received her music experience by working with Owen, and it really turned out to be a whole family affair. Lee on the French horn, and at the beginning, Norma in diapers in those early years. In the legacy book, Owen was filling out, one of the questions that the book asked was, did you ever feel that God had a special calling in your life? And Owen answered, yes, but not religiously, but as a father. And I'd like to read to you a hand-typed, with a few type-overs. I'd like to read what Norma thought of her father at 12 years old about his special calling as a father. And it's called The World's Greatest Dad Contest. And she writes, I think my father is the world's greatest dad because he treats me as an equal. He doesn't think he's superior over my brother and I. He corrects our mistakes when he thinks it is necessary, but he wants us to make our own decisions. He doesn't spoil us. He gives us responsibility. We either do the work or we don't. I feel that my father is the kind of person I wish everyone could be, but I like his individuality. He is patient and explains things to me. My father is a very open person. In my family, we know that he loves us because he expresses his feelings towards us. He realizes that a kid needs to think and learn and to just be alone. I love my father for what he is. There is no way anyone can take the place of my father because he'll always be number one in my heart. And that, from a 12-year-old, is pretty awesome. Owen instilled a strong work ethic in his children, along with personal determination and compassion. His children knew that they were respected and valued as capable individuals. Their father gave them the roots of stability and the wings to fly. In addition to public school service, Owen directed the Messiah Brass Choir from 1969 to 73, including 2 concert tours to Germany. Also, the University of California, Berkeley Summer Outreach Program, community college musicals, and church choirs. Owen taught high school and college math for 5 years in Fremont, California, before retiring here to the Sierra Foothills, where he formed the Newcastle Brass. Owen lived a full and vital life until his illness slowed him down. He struggled through the last several years, always trying to be full of grace, but his days were often very difficult, and eventually his journey came to an end. It is in the ending that we can celebrate a life well lived. I invite us now to hear Lee share a few of his words as he remembers his father, or what he lifts up as important, and then Norma will share some of her things.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Reverend Courtwright for a wonderful welcome and service for us here. A celebration, not necessarily a funeral, but a celebration. Usually at these sorts of gatherings, you welcome those who have come the furthest away, and those people are very important, and I welcome you, and I thank you for coming as far as you have. But in this case, I'd also like to welcome all of you who are here locally, because my wife and my child now live in Boston, and so we weren't able to be here the last few years. And so those of you that have been here with him during these last years have been very important to us. It's been a great comfort to us being so far away that you've been able to be here with me. I only have 2 thoughts to share about my dad. The first one I was able to share with him a couple times before he moved on. And that thought was that he's the person that I admire most in my life. Not unlike, I think, what Norma expressed at the age of 12. It took me a little longer to get to that point. But she was always a little faster at these sorts of things than I was. And the reason was that Reverend Courtwright told you about his background. It was a tough childhood. It was a broken home, and it was a very poor challenge, but he was able to come through it. One of the things I'm very lucky now is I get to work with many wonderful people, and they're doing fantastic things in the world to make it a better place. And as I get to know those people, I usually find that they've had very strong beginnings. They've had wonderful schools, they've had a very strong family, they've had opportunities they've made taken fantastic advantage of. But Dad, as you heard, didn't have those opportunities, and I think the fact that he could go as far as he did and do some fantastic things is a real testament to him. But the accomplishments in the symphony and in teaching, those pale by comparison with the accomplishments that I think that are the most important. And I'd have to point to my dad and my mom as a model of fidelity, perseverance in their marriage of 45 years. It really is an inspiration we can all take motivation from. I also think that having 2 children who are happily married is a fantastic accomplishment, and that's, as I raise my own child now, I know how hard that is. The second thought I'd like to share with you is actually it's from my granddaughter Piper through her nanny, and her memories of my dad were at Christmas. We would always come out for Christmas, and she would always take the present to Granddad to open. It didn't matter if it was his present or not, but they would open it together. So these are the memories she has of the Christmas tree and of my dad. And she would call him Oompa, was his name. So this is how Sarah Becker, her nanny, described it one day when she heard that Oompa had died. She's almost 3, so you understand. Today on the way home from school, Piper noticed that the dead bird we always see was gone. She said, "Oh, I guess the dead bird is at God's house now." And I told her, yes, God's house is called heaven, and it's a wonderful place to be, but you can't go there until you die. She then said, "What do you think the bird is doing in heaven?" And I painted this picture of bird heaven, where there are bunches of worms to eat in blue skies and lots of colorful yarn to make soft nests, and they sing all day. I told her some people believe that heaven is all of your favorite things put together in one place. She then asked, would my heaven have my teddy bear? And I told her, of course, it would have all the things you love. So she started telling me about her heaven, and how it would be filled with farm animals and zoos and storyland and mommy and daddy and sprinklers and a blue train and a blue plane that she could fly all by herself, and how she could have a kitty and maybe even a puppy. It was very sweet. So I asked, what do you think Oompa's heaven will be like? And she thought, and she said, well, of course, you know he loves to open presents, so there will be lots of presents for him to open, and books for him to read, because I think he likes books. Oh, and cozy chairs, because he likes chairs, and they would be all the colors, and everyone could sit in them. So I think that's a very nice and innocent memory that we should all take with us about Oompa and where he's living right now in God's house. There's a last thing I'd like to mention, and that is to thank someone who was just exceptional in his love and his care and his faith and devotion. In many ways, he was like a second son to my dad, and he's like a brother to myself. And over the last few years, Steve McNally has been just amazing and a huge source of comfort and love and support for everyone. So thank you. You will, and Steve will actually give us some music on Dad's work.
I'm not good at projecting just as Lee is. So, can you hear me? Okay. I too would like to thank the many individuals that have supported my family during my father's long illness. I'm deeply touched by the level of care that he received by the community of medical staff and all of the friends and the community at large that were present in his daily life. And as equally moving is the love that you have all extended to my mother and Lee and myself since Dad's passing. How do I wish to remember Dad? The girl in me remembers camping and swimming in Capitola, riding bikes in Yosemite, hiking up Mission Peak with my friend Patty one time, and the trips to Farrell's ice cream parlor. I definitely inherited his love for all things sweet, like the fudge and the cotton candy he would bring home from any traveling fair that would be between his work and home. He would always stop and pick up some cotton candy. And I got an affinity for black licorice pretty early. I think his deeds are well documented and they show his mettle. How he completed the deeds can be attributed to his passion, ferocity, loyalty, tenacity, intellect, and a sense of exploration. He exhibited all of these traits, but mostly I remember his humanity and the compassion he had for others and the condition of people all around the world. Dad lived his life in the moment, and he had one eye on the future. He seldom looked back. He had regrets about some of the paths he chose during his lifetime. He didn't dwell on it. He was driven by a strong survival instinct. He could be easily consumed by a project at school or at home. He pushed his students and his family to not tolerate mediocre efforts. Not quite the perfectionist. Pretty close sometimes. He asked us to do what we could do using only what we had and do to the best of our ability. He encouraged us to create what we needed to complete our tasks. And I would often marvel at how his hazel eyes would spark with intensity or with amusement. I'm sure that sparkle and the way he would set his jaw, clench his teeth a little bit, and just work those face muscles just right was noticed by many of you. Dad carved out a life with his head, his hands, and raw talent as best he was able. He did not put much value in tangible items, riches, or titles, except to use them as a resource. He repeatedly told Lee and I how proud he was of our achievements. He supported our decisions, even after 12. And he often didn't agree with them. But he taught us to be responsible for the consequences of our actions. He instilled an interest in helping others in both Lee and myself. His deeds showed the way. I believe it is every parent's hope and part of their social contract to try and make the world a better place for their children. I believe Dad worked towards this as best he knew how. Thank you, Dad, for working so hard to provide for Mom, Lee, and myself.
This is the opportunity where we've only just given a small glimpse into who Owen was for each of you here today. I know that there are a couple of people who have some things to read, but would like to open it up for folks to be able to share briefly a thought or something that you appreciated or want to have a chance to say your thoughts and to do so. So I'm going to ask you to talk to the microphone so that I'm happy to bring it to you if you want to stand where you are. But we'll try this. Would you like?
Sure. My name is Susie Bryant Grant, and I was a student of Owen's at San Mateo High School from 1964 to 1968. And I have a letter here that my brother, John, wrote, and he was also a student at Owen's, and I'd like to read that to you first. In 1967, my older sister, Susie, performed as Liesl in San Mateo High School's production of The Sound of Music, which was directed by Owen Fleming. I was 12 years old at the time, and my little brother Mark and cousin Alec attended one of the performances. The three of us sat apart from our families in the front row center, and as the house lights dimmed and Mr. Fleming stood conducting the overture just a few feet in front of us, we decided to have some fun by making various flatulent noises while giggling our heads off. After about 30 seconds, Mr. Fleming, without interrupting his conducting, simply turned his head to the right, and out of the corner of his mouth, we heard him sternly growl, "If you kids don't knock it off, I'm going to kick your asses out of here." Needless to say, we were absolutely silent for the rest of the performance. Less than a year later, Mr. Fleming was my choir instructor when I became a freshman at San Mateo High. I was blessed to be a student of his for 3 of my 4 years at San Mateo. He was far and away my favorite teacher for a number of reasons. Mr. Fleming's passion and enthusiasm were infectious, and he always strove to inspire us to achieve and to become far more than we could ever imagine. He never talked down to his students. He actually respected us and treated us like young men and women, and expected us to act as such. He allowed a lot of freedom in the classroom. There were many occasions when he put his music aside and just talked to us. He shared his knowledge and his experience and his wisdom, and we hung on to every word. In both sharing with and listening to his students, Mr. Fleming helped us to get through the craziness of high school and the turbulent times that were the late 1960s. During the ensuing years, I occasionally think about writing to Mr. Fleming and letting him know how very much he meant to me, and how he and his classes helped me to keep sane during that time. But of course, it was one of those things that I never quite got around to doing, and I regret that now. But I trust that in his new life, Owen Fleming will be shown the wonderful influence he had on so many lives, and that the love and dedication he showed to us will truly ripple throughout eternity. As for my brother John. As for myself, I agree with everything that John wrote in his letter. For my very first day of high school, I was a little girl in a corner seat up in the top row, and I loved singing. I loved choir. It was a love affair with Mr. Fleming from the first day of my school year, and I was there for 4 years. When I was a junior in high school, I wanted to try out for the lead in The Sound of Music. And I had a good voice, but I didn't have a great voice. And, you know, all of us talked and we go, "What are you trying out for? What are you trying out for?" And everybody knew. And Mr. Fleming came to me and he said, "Well, Sue, what are you trying out for?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to try out for Maria." And he had to find a way to tell me that I wasn't ready for the Maria part. But he had to do it in a way that he wasn't going to hurt my feelings. So he said to me, "You know, I have 2 seniors that would be really good Marias, but I don't have anybody that would be a good Liesl. And I think you would be perfect for Liesl, so why don't you try out for that?" And I said, "Okay." And the rest of it's history. I got the part as Liesl. And he was so kind that way, you know. He always tried to make us feel good about ourselves, and like John wrote, he always made us strive to be the best, and it was so good for every one of his students. When I was a senior in high school, it was very sad when it was time for our very last concert. And every year the director gave away what was called the coveted Director's Award. And this was given to an outstanding senior, who had a lot of experience in choir, who had been involved to the max, who had a great voice. And, you know, it's one of those things a little girl sits there and thinks, you know, I don't really think I'll get it, but wouldn't it be wonderful if I did? And so, you know, we all got up there and, you know, and announced that some other person was getting the Director's Award. And I just sat there and I was smiling, but I was kind of sad inside. And then he stops and he says, "But wait, this is the first year that there are 2 outstanding students. And I've never done this before, but this year I want to give the other award to Sue Bryant, just because of her heart." you know, just because I just loved choir and I just loved everything about it. During my life, I have been involved in several productions. I live in Quincy, California, and our local junior college puts on a musical every year. And Betty and Owen traveled to Quincy when I was in the South Pacific. And last year I had a part in Fiddler on the Roof. And I don't know if you've ever seen Fiddler on the Roof, but in the very beginning when all the townspeople are standing backstage and Teddy is there giving his little talk about Anateca and tradition, all of the townspeople are in the back. And they're just standing there waiting to go on. And every single performance I would close my eyes and I'd say, oh, this is for you. This is because you taught me how to do this and I wanted to continue this for the rest of my life. And I want to honor you by doing the best that I can do and be the best I can be. And you just touched my life and Eddie too. And I just feel so fortunate to have known him and have to be a student of his and to have him touch my life. I'll miss him. Thank you.
I'm Alice Shell. My husband's first teaching job was in Tehachapi, California. We went there in 1960, and I thought it was the vast wasteland. And all year, I kept waiting for something to happen. Well, in the fall of 1961, here come Owen and Betty, and something happened. Things kind of opened up. Life got fun. And I no longer felt I was a big city girl living in this little tiny town because I had a pair of big city people there. We've known each other now for 45 years. There's a story that Owen's son-in-law, Dave, would like me to tell. And it's the foundation of our relationship with Betty and Owen and their children, although Lee was with us by then, but Norma came a couple of years later. Living in Tehachapi and teaching in Tehachapi was not a great way to become rich. And for beginning teachers, and it was my husband's first job as a teacher, it was even worse than that. And we would get together at least maybe every other Sunday, and we would have dinner. And we would buy 8 chicken and 3 cans of beer. 1 for Alan, that's my husband, and 1 for Owen, and Betty and I shared the third one. It really is this myth that put us all together, this chicken and the beer. But it's been a long relationship. We've performed together, we've traveled together, we've loved each other's children together. When my daughter decided to marry, she wanted Uncle Owen because we've been Aunt Betty and Uncle Owen and Aunt Alice and Uncle Alan. I am so confused. And so we took her husband, Eric, up here, and Sue Ellen told me afterwards she was a nervous wreck because she was afraid that Uncle Owen wouldn't like her Eric, and they really liked each other, which made it very superb. And when all of our children were married, we all participated musically in Norma and Dave's wedding, and Lee and Candace's, and Owen and Betty and Lee participated as musicians, and Norma was one of, she ended up being maid of honor because the maid of honor was very sick. And Dave came and worked his little tushy off at the reception, for which we were all truly grateful. My best friend kept asking me, does he have a brother? I have a daughter. So it's been a long, sweet, loving relationship. And Betty is my sister. I never had one, and she's been it. So I love all of the Flemings and all of the appendages that are coming Flemings. I'm going to miss him, but I still have Betty.
Yep.
Thank you. Bert, you had, thank you.
Thank you. Betty asked me to read a tribute to Owen from Bill Wall, who now lives in West Cliff, Colorado. He begins with, "How can you say goodbye? Owen was my friend, a man with a wide-ranging mind, interested in music, mathematics, history, science, and politics. In short, one heck of a guy with which to have a good conversation. I wish I could have known Owen for longer. It's one of those ironies of life that while we lived only a few doors to each other for years in Fremont, we never met until just before he and Betty moved away to Newcastle. But our connection was strong enough when we did meet to keep that link. I'll add a footnote right here that Bill and Connie Wall then moved to the mountains of southern Colorado. So Bill goes on and says, "We talked for hours without running out of topics to analyze. At one time, he said we would have made a good team, with me as president and he as vice president. I felt he reversed the roles I would have chosen. Whether we discussed American foreign policy, Civil War battles, or homeowner associations, we always found the other's view worth considering, and both of us ended up with a richer understanding. Owen was beyond all else a man of clear and worthy character. His philosophy and regard for others had no meanness in any sense of the word. He was not a small man in his undertakings, nor did he look down on others. He found joy in living and had a great sense of humor that allowed him to laugh with others, not at them. But what I will remember most was that he tried to be an honest friend to all, and he made the world a bit sweeter for being part of it. I hope to meet Owen again. I don't know how or when, but I don't think our conversations have come to an end. They will just be in a bit of a different surrounding. I look forward to that." Signed, Bill.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you. My name, by the way, is Milton Williams. As you can hear, I have something to do with singing. I'm also a conductor. And I met him in '63 because my wife was his accompanist at San Mateo High School. And the reason I think I met him was because I had a bit of a problem. That year, a high school student who played the bassoon and his girlfriend who played the cello asked me if I would start a youth orchestra that could be a little different from the one on the peninsula. And I said, well, sure, I'd be happy to, not knowing, of course, the politics of high school education. So, of course, I started out innocently trying to do this thing, only to find all of these blockages from all of the high school teachers in the district. Owen was my savior. He absolutely was fantastic. He taught me how to talk with, work with the teachers there in the district so that they understood what I was trying to do would benefit their programs rather than take away from it. Owen and I shared many things musical over the years. As a matter of fact, when I was at the University of California in Berkeley, I was asked to take over the summer musical program for children, for young students. And if it had not been for Owen coming in as my main instructor for that program, I'm not certain the thing would have survived all of the problems, of course, at the University of California. Anyway, Owen was more than, I don't even know how to describe Owen to you. Owen was one of the most wonderful people I've ever known. He was always a friend, always there when you needed him, and I, of course, needed him more than most, I think. And he was generous in his opinion. He was generous, though, in everything he did. Before I step down, this is also a letter to Betty from George and Evelyn Spent, Reverend Spent from Messiah Lutheran Church. Let me get my other glasses. He mentions my name in here, so when I read it, don't think that I'm saying these words. They're George Spent's words. Dear Betty, Evelyn and I would like to be with you and your family and friends as you remember and celebrate Owen's life. We are grateful to our mutual good friend, Milton, for reading this note for us. It was through Milton that we got to know Owen and you, and we are grateful for that relationship of memory and our mutual ministry of music. Years ago, while attending a very large Kirchentag rally in Stuttgart, Germany, I was thrilled to hear a great mass Posaunenchor that filled the entire end of the stadium with 1,000 brass instruments, filling the great stadium with glorious music. That was the same day as the moon landing, which we learned about on our way back to the hotel where we were staying. I remember telling Milton about it when we returned home and suggested to him that it would be great to have such a brass choir at Messiah Church, where we were both serving at the time. Milton said, I know just the person who could do that. We met and shared mutual visions of life and music and church. What happened next was one of the most exciting and meaningful experiences in my time in the ministry. We already had, he praises me as, I don't want to read that. And a great group, but now with Owen and Betty and their family and a great group of young musicians, they rounded up, a wonderful expression of church music was developed. Adapting brass music to American Lutheran liturgical patterns was a challenge, but Owen addressed it with artistry and reverence, so much so that before long, the Messiah Brass Choir had invitations to churches all over the state and to play at the statewide conventions of the Synod. A recording was made and distributed throughout the country, and then an invitation to travel to Germany, play several concerts there, and to appear at the nationwide Festival of Brass Choirs at the great cathedral in Nîmes. They were at the end of the program the first year, but were invited back to be at the head of the program the following year. The music was great, but the impact on the lives of the young people who played in the choir is a story of lifetime good. Owen was a great musician and a great inspiration to the many young people that participated in this unique church music program. I'm having difficulty with my left eye today. I'm also a little choked up because Owen just meant too much to me. Anyway, here we go. Over the years, and long after all of us had finished our tenure at Messiah Church, we were honored to continue a treasured relationship, fellowship with your family, Betty. You and Owen invited us to several very important events in your lives, graduations, weddings, just happy times in your home. In this sunset of our lives, when we look back over the years among the long shadows and beautiful rays of light, we're inspired to remember the music, the positive words, the gracious positive living, the wonderful gift of God to us, this precious friendship with you and Owen and your family. Sincerely, George and Evelyn Spence, August 2006. And here is their original.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Alan Shell. I'm the other half of the Shell family that met Owen and Betty in 1961 in Tehachapi. We had a symbiotic relationship. He demanded perfection, but he also depended on me to provide some of the keyboard accompaniment that he needed from time to time. And I remember that at one time, right after we got to San Mateo, he had a number that he was using in a spring concert that he wanted some organ accompaniment for. So he came over and recorded the accompaniment, and I played it while he conducted me. And then I went to the concert. It was the most excruciating concert I ever sat through. If I had actually been playing at that time, instead of listening to a recording of myself playing, it would have been fine. But sitting there, hearing the organ with no body playing it, just that recording going, and the choir singing to it, I was on pins and needles because I didn't know how they were possibly going to hang together. But they did. And it ended just very fine. So I heaved a sigh of relief. A few years later, Alice and I were invited to go to Germany in '73 when Owen went back with another group. And we traveled southern Germany for 7 weeks. During that 7 weeks, we gave a total of about 49 concerts. Some of them were 2 a day, and sometimes 3 times a day. And then we did have a little time off. But probably the most memorable concert was when we were in the old Munster, and the organ was on a small platform high above the altar, about 40 feet up the wall. Owen and the brass were down front, and we were doing a piece based on O Come Emmanuel. And the organ played, the brass played, we played back and forth. The only time I could see Owen was when I leaned back like this to look over the edge of the rail behind the organ. And once he gave the downbeat, I was on my own. We were right together all the way through until the final chord. And as we got to the final chord, there was a pause, and then the chord. And I was looking again, and as I moved forward, my balance changed, and I hit the last chord just a hair before the brass sounded. I don't think anybody knew it, but I did. But it worked. How we kept together through that, I don't know, except that consistency in his direction so that we knew exactly what each other was doing. So even though we were many feet away from each other, we were able to play together. There's also a funny story that I was asked to tell. And I guess it's all right to go ahead and use the words that Owen reported that he used. Or what I heard, the way we came about this was we heard that Owen had been called into a conference with the principal and some parents. And there were some parents that were upset. The reason they were upset because he had said something to their child that they really didn't approve of. And it turned out that in a rehearsal, the student kept playing the wrong note. Owen had stopped the rehearsal, gone over, worked with the section, then he went through the section, worked with each individual, showed them how to play it, went back, raised the tone again, and sure enough, they were the same wrong notes. He stopped again, he went back again, and made sure that everybody understood exactly what they were playing, went back and raised the tone again, and they went, same wrong notes.
Saxophones.
I don't remember the instrument. But it was recorded that then what he did was go over and place the kids' fingers on the keys. He said, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Have him do it. You got it? Fine. He went back and he same thing again, same wrong notes. He says, finally he went over and says, Adam, play it right, I'll break your fingers. At times he was a perfectionist. I don't know how he became on that trip as an organist, because I know I was far from perfect. But he said it was better than playing with a different organist in every town. One other thing I'd like to share with you. Not too long ago, Owen said to me one day, he says, by the way, I'm a church organist and have been for many, many years. He said, I don't know why I have been so blessed in my life. And I just looked at him and listened. And he says, I know that, you know, I'm not going to be around for very long. He says, but I have no pain, I have no discomfort, I just have no energy. And he says, I really just feel like I've been blessed, I have a good family, I've enjoyed working, I've enjoyed what I've done, and I just don't understand it. He says, I never went to church, but I feel like God has really blessed me. And all I could offer was to say that that is what we, through our teachings, call grace. The grace of God is for all of you. And I think he was an exemplary example of that. He really did feel completely at home in that respect, that he had received the grace of God in his life.
Amen.
And he was saying behind me with his baritone, play your part. He'd walk around the room and just transpose whatever he was reading. But he was an interesting cat because he didn't, you wanted to work for him. You didn't just show up and try to get through it. You felt that you owed it to him because you knew he knew every part in the book. I remember the Sloan Cathedral. It happens a lot in a lot of people's lives. It was so big, you had to watch the chord changes because the echo was about a second and a half. Well, I guess something wasn't working out, but Owen had to stop us. You were mentioning you couldn't see him just barely. I could see him perfectly. Suddenly, he disappeared. He dropped down because he wanted us to stop. He figured if we looked up and couldn't see him, we'd stop playing. Well, I was the last one to stop, but yes, we did stop. It was a very interesting technique. I've never known a director to actually fall to the floor. I thought something had happened, but we popped up a moment later. It's been an interesting experience with Owen. I was fortunate enough to actually come back and see him just recently. Borrowed some music from him, which I still have.
Keep it.
Apparently, you won't need it anymore. He'll be up playing it somewhere else. He was an amazing man. He taught me to love my instrument. I still have one in the back of the car. I have an instrument he used to play. It's pretty old now. It's kind of feeling like I do some ways. It's just an amazing thing to have the gift of music given to you by son. It's hard to believe that we don't do more of it in schools today. It's a legacy that I wish everybody could experience, even just the appreciation of music. But when you can play it with a group, I think that's what the grace we're talking about really is. You can express your emotions. You can get over almost anything if you have a little time to play your instrument. It's amazing. That man, Owen Fleming, to death.
I hope that you will continue your stories with one another as the evening goes on and have the opportunity to continue to let the healing happen and the memories become alive. We are grateful and we give thanks as we remember Owen's life. We now carry him with us into our tomorrows. Nothing can now detract from the joy and beauty and the challenges of Owen's life. Nothing can possibly affect the happiness and the depth of experience that he himself knew. from life. And so whatever length of time you had Owen as a husband, a father-in-law, a grandfather, or a friend, I think I can safely say that you will always remain grateful for him having lived and having known him in the richness and the spunkiness of his unique personality, a gift from God. I invite Betty to come forward and give her words of appreciation.
No, we're only one roll.
It's okay.
Only one.
You know, for all of you musicians who have been sharing stories, the one thought I have is that now and forever, his B flat will always be in tune. Because I know when he was playing his horn down here, he was tortured by not getting the B flat in tune. So it's always in tune now. One of the great joys and comforts in life is sharing special times with others. My children and I are comforted today, knowing that we are surrounded by so many of you who have shared other times with our family, with Owen. If you were standing here with me, Owen would tell you that another great joy in his life was sharing a bountiful meal and spirited conversation. After Reverend Jackie closes this portion of our celebration, we invite everybody to enjoy supper with us. Are you little guys ready to eat? So, a little bit about the mechanics. We ask you to please serve yourself salad from the buffet, salad and bread, and then have a seat. The doors will magically open back there. And then Suzanne, our caterer, right there, hi Suzanne, will invite you table by table to come up and choose your entree and all the other good stuff that goes with it. So save room for dessert. We have Owen's favorites, that's Napoleon's from Hilda's Bakery in Auburn. We have a whipped cream cake, and we want the children to blow out all the candles before we cut it. And just think lots of happy thoughts and clap. And then we have a dozen of those maple glazed donuts that Owen would eat any time of day. So, thank you very much, and I'll let Jackie finish.
Thank you, Betty. I invite us to join in our closing prayer. Oh, Creator, with deep respect, we bid Owen farewell. We let him go now in the quietness of the Spirit. In this still place, we ask that the Fleming family and all their loved ones and friends might feel your strong presence, so they are able to gather the strength they need to refocus and reshape their lives. May their breath move in and out as one with you and with all creation. Bring them rest and healing. Let them feel a sense of hope in the deepest places of their hearts. We pray this in the spirit and the presence of the Creator. Amen. As we say goodbye, I would like to just share as we send forth, that could be perhaps Owen's own words for us today. And it's a Native American prayer, and it goes, "Do not stand by my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. And when awakened in the morning hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not think of me as gone. I am with you still in each new dawn." As we leave this place today, let us celebrate the life of a great man. And as we go, Steve McNally is going to play on Owen's own baritone. So go now in God's peace. Amen and amen.
Thank you.
Everybody's going to blow at the same time, okay?
Wait. Hold on. Wait, everybody will go. Can you all see? One ready. Two more.
Boy, that's one very seven.
There we go. Okay, one, two, three.
Those are hot. No, she'll take them all. Thank you. Those are hot. Those are hot, guys. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
I didn't care.
That's good.
Are you going to the table?
Amelia, stop.
I was just hoping the donut might be better. I can steal one now. I got no shame.
I don't know what I'm pressing it. I'm pressing it.
About reminding us. Well, you knew that when you were playing it, that you were going to. No, absolutely. And this is East Clemson. Too bad. Family we remodeled just about every room. You're already in it. Yeah, we bought it May 1st. So we've been there May, June, July, August. So far we've rebuilt the master bedroom, both bedrooms, the master bath. How many square foot house? 18. She lives there for a young couple like herself. She's living there and she's still got years to go. She'll retire. I'm retired. So I'm up there every weekend. You see yourself yeah. Oh, you do. You bought it knowing. But you have no sense of having it unless you have it the way you want it. So spring we'll go to people like and we'll go to shop. Have it already. No. except for the reason the burn that they leave right here. Yeah, but it's so much easier just to do a burn. We wasn't too bad, but I did play that game. We used to plow. How many? It's 15 years on Tuesday. Peppermill? Oh, yeah, Peppermill Steakhouse. It is a steakhouse, and it's called the Steakhouse. Sounds like a good place. It was a step in the right direction. Answer a lot of things, but I'm better off than before. Not just in benefits. Yeah, you know what? Actually, benefits too. It is benefits, but a lot of management. How many dollars you got? Oldest one is up in college performing arts Cornish. Quite well known. You might have heard of Cornish. It's not easy to get into it all day. Bless her heart, we talked about her learning the value of what persistence is in life, because, you know, and she did it a second time, got turned down again, and did it a third time. She got in the voting department. And she's 4.0, she's a residence space. It's just going great. I seem to like her. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and do it. I knew there was a horse around. I know, we talked about that umpteen times. But before you know it, we're going to actually have a guest tour. You know what? We're going to wait till the guest room's done. It's a pretty big place. Well, no, hey, it's not going to be too long. It's about right now. Down there, just make some big phone calls.
I got tired of walking up and sitting back on the bedroom. I'm tired of today.
It's kind of goes all 3 bedrooms are completely empty. So now we've got.
Wait a minute, it's done? It's finished?
Yeah, other than some fronts, we're trimming on the rooftop.
Okay.
probably right here somewhere.
Okay, that's enough. Everybody wasn't.
Kids look great.
You know, the little tan outfits, little uniforms, and they all come driving up in the golf carts. Where was the head?
I wish I still looked like that. He looked like that for a number of years.
Well, this is the beard, right?
He had a little scar on his cheek. He explained that to me one day. I was actually exiting the time one day and I jumped on a bunch of guys were and he said, yeah, I got this little scar from that. But he works at, last I heard,
Where are your kids? Where are my kids?
he may have retired by now.
Wow.
He's only a couple years old. He's like a freshman. Hey, you want to join a class? I had no idea why he chose
You guys got to go